Welcome, everyone, to another episode of 100 Words or Less, the podcast. I am your host, Ray Harkins, and thank you for joining us. This is episode number 17, and we are part of the Punk News Podcast Network. Visit punknews.org. You can check out all the latest and greatest with your favorite bands, music reviews, show reviews, and there's also a ton of shit talking as well. And you can look for that in the comment section over any news post. There will be conversations that are not even related to the news that gets posted in the first place, which I kind of find funny. It's usually even like the first post. Someone's just asking, hey, did you watch the latest episode of Breaking Bad? And it's like, isn't there like a message board to do that with? But regardless, punknews.org, and we're happy to be a part of it. Let's get some other business out of the way first, then we'll dive in. Follow us on Twitter at 100 Words Podcast. And more exciting than anything else, finally figured out what to do with the website. Go to 100wordspodcast.com, and if you are a Tumblr user, you can follow us there. Some of you have wrote in and really enjoyed what the previous podcast that I did with some friends called First World Problems. What we did with that, a little segment called Quick Hits, where basically we recommended either music, movies, or food, pencils, whatever. So some of you were requesting that kind of come back. So that is coming back. That's actually something that I've started to do. I started posting recommendations on the site, just little things that either I'm listening to or checking out or whatever the case may be. Eventually, I'll start to bring in some guest contributors from that perspective. So yes, follow the website, 100wordspodcast.com. And I also would encourage you to rate the show if you have been listening to it, because I'm not going to lie, the download numbers are pretty great. They're actually pretty impressive. When I log in and look at them, I said, wow, that many people decided to download the Tommy Rogers podcast, which, by the way, episode number 14, most popular podcast I've ever done in my entire life. So there's a lot of people that check that out. So anyways, rate the show. You can either click 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars, whatever the case may be. It just makes us look cooler in iTunes. And if you don't like listening on iTunes, that website that I referenced you, I post a little Flash player and people can check it out that way. And they don't even have to worry about downloading stuff. They can just listen to it right there. When I post this episode, I will be in Hawaii. For one of my annual vacations with my family, and I'm pretty stoked. So when you are listening to this, I may or may not be flying and or on a beach or sleeping or doing something in a tropical location. So that's the beauty of time travel and travel on airplanes and all those other things. So anyways, I also would like to mention something else that I have been consuming recently. A zine called Rump Shaker Fanzine. For those of you that are too young to remember, a lot of the punk, hardcore, independent music community used to actually publish magazines. And when I say magazines, I mean something, not like your Entertainment Weekly or Time, but similar in fashion as far as it looks like a magazine, but it's all independently published, either through Kinko's or some random printing press. Needless to say, Rump Shaker Fanzine, this is the 6th issue. It's one of the best zines out there, plain and simple. There are not many that exist now, but this newest issue, which has been, I think, 10 years in the making, he has a lot of different interviews with people like Mike Judge from the band Judge, Ceremony, Fucked Up. Trying to think of what else. There's just a lot of cool stuff. And my own personal favorite thing is he actually sits down with people that are sort of luminaries within the scene, so to speak, and their mothers. So like in this issue, he interviews Walter Schreifels from Quicksand, Rival Schools, and his mom. And he sits down with Dan Yemin from Lifetime, Kid Dynamite, Painted Black, and his mom. And it just provides an insight that people just aren't able to see ever, because you view a person through however you're consuming their music, or you've met them at a show or whatever. But, our parents know us in a completely different light. And it's always interesting to kind of see that. And that's kind of why I always ask questions within the podcast about, these are guests and their relation to their family, just because you can see so much of why a person does what they do based on their familial relations. So anyways, rumpshakerfanzine.com. I think that's the website. If not, I apologize. But you can Google it, and you'll be able to find it. I think it's like $10. I ordered it immediately, and it was an amazing $10. It's super thick, too. I think like 160 some odd pages. So check it out, enjoy it, and let me know what you think of it. Anyways, my guest this week is Chris Hansen, the owner, CEO / badass of No Sleep Records. I've known Chris for a long time, and full disclosure, I actually helped Chris professionally with some financial stuff, but this is not a cheap plug for his record label. Like I said, I've known Chris for quite some time. He'll take you through his career moves when we talk about the interview, or when I talk to him in the interview. But he's definitely one of my closer friends now, and I was really excited to sit down and have this open and honest conversation. I'm not gonna lie, this is definitely the most in-depth I've gotten with a guest as far as their own trials and tribulations and kind of how they've grown as a person, just because I've known Chris for so long. So it was easier for me to make my own observations and kind of be able to have him open up about those observations. So yeah, but No Sleep Records is an amazing independent record label. They actually provide the music for our intro, that band Balance and Composure, the music that you hear at the beginning and the ending of the podcast. That is that band. And they also put out records from the Wonder Years and La Dispute and Aficionado, and yeah, nosleeprecords.com, and you can find out all the information you possibly can. But it's really hard to have an independent record label these days because clearly the music industry has changed a lot. And so the fact that he's been able to make this successful especially over the past 2 to 3 years is, kind of flaunting in the face of how other record labels are shrinking and downsizing, and he just kind of continues to grow. So anyways, open and honest conversation. I was really excited to do this, and I went over to his apartment, and we started talking about all of this fun stuff. So here it is. Hope you enjoy. I'm not gonna lie. I've been thinking about obviously doing this for a while with you, because obviously I see you quite often. But I was excited to do this because I think that not only do you have a lot of different experiences within the music industry that obviously you can share to people, but you don't fit a certain mold within independent music as far as whether it's your own beliefs, but yeah, you're not the typical dude, and in a good way, in my opinion. So that's why I was always excited to be like, Chris will be perfect for this.
We'll release a LP of this recording.
Yeah, this could be the Chris Hansen spoken word, quadruple 12-inch. This will be like a 4-hour interview.
Yeah, that works for me. And we'll have we'll do some remixes of everything.
That makes sense to me.
And we're basically gonna make me a 10 LP.
Okay, then we can do some dubstep remixes.
Yeah.
Awesome. But you were born and raised essentially in Southern California, right?
Yeah, I was born in Fountain Valley.
Okay.
And then grew up in Hansen.
Yeah. So did your parents you lived in Fountain Valley? Or that's where they had?
Yeah, I was just born at the Fountain Valley General Hospital, or whatever, off of Warner.
Do they have a plaque above the room where you were born?
Oh, of course.
Right. You bought that for them?
Yeah, and I bought them. Like, hey, you don't know who I am.
Yeah.
So here's a plaque.
Little do you know.
I don't know which room I was born in, but just put it above one room and say it's
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Nice plaque.
Right.
It's better than the PETA one. That one doesn't exist.
No, that one doesn't exist.
I knew it.
So you were born in Fountain Valley, but then your parents lived in Huntington. So that's essentially you view your formative years as growing up in Huntington.
Yeah. I was born in Fountain Valley. We lived in Hansen. Yeah, grew up on Normandy Lane.
Normandy Lane.
Normandy Lane.
Okay.
Over by St. Bonaventure.
So then what would your porn name be? You have to do your
My porn name?
Yeah, your middle name and the street you were born on.
William Normandy.
That's pretty good.
That was pretty funny.
I always love mine is Edward Gaverny.
Edward Gaverny.
But that's where I lived most of my life. Like it's like a French porn
William
star.
Normandy.
That's pretty good. I think that there's probably a porn star that already exists with that name.
Well, he's gonna die. That's my name. William Normandy.
And so, what did your parents do, like job wise?
My mom. She do us. Well, she worked.
I mean, not like when you were born, but just like your memories as you were kind of
my dad, like not office manager, like accountant / manager / whatever of like savings loan, and then when that went out, and then
he was a working professional.
Yeah, he was a working professional.
Got it.
He was a working professional, and my mom was just office manager.
Sure.
Somewhat accounting as well.
Yeah. And how long had they? Because you are an only child.
Yeah.
How long were they married before they had you? I know it's tough to remember.
Let's see here.
Like they wanted to have kids. You weren't like, here's a surprise.
Well, they found each other late in life.
Sure.
As well, so they were like, they're fairly older,
right?
Already, like as a kid, my dad, people thought he was my grandpa and stuff.
I
want to say they're married probably like 5 years, maybe longer than that.
Sure, but obviously since
probably
they were
actually maybe 10.
Right.
I don't really know exactly.
Yeah. And so, but yeah, since like you said, I didn't know that they found each other later in life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, had they previously been married before?
No.
Okay.
Neither had been married.
And so, well, that's pretty romantic that they would.
My dad was a little bit of a ladies' man.
Oh yeah.
For a while.
He didn't peg himself down to anybody.
No. One of my favorite stories my mom would always tell me. Well, my dad said it too, but my mom mentioned it recently. After they got married, they were at like his place. That's where they lived, and then some like girl called on the phone, like asking for him. Like, Mom's like, "No, this is his wife." Yada yada. Kind of
Step off, bitch.
Yeah, basically.
That's funny, but you never experienced. Your dad would just tell you stories about that. Like there wouldn't be too much like real life experience where you were just like, oh wow, like my dad was kind of a player.
Yeah, no, I mean he wasn't like really, but just like he had a lot of girlfriends.
Sure.
Like I remember my mom told me something about he had like one time he had like I think it was 3 girlfriends or something.
Just juggling.
Yeah, he was just juggling.
I find like
the ladies.
We have a lot of similar experiences because my dad was totally the same way. Like he would, such a distinct memory, but I think I was like maybe 10 or 11, and he would, because my parents were divorced, it was like 4, and so I would always go back to Las Vegas where he lived, and so I'd stay with him for like 2 or 3 weeks. But he would take me on dates, and it was like, thinking about it now, it's like, dude, that is so fucked up. He would take me on like an afternoon date. We'd go like mini golfing with some woman, and then we'd go to dinner with a different woman.
So he was totally using you as like, look at this cute kid.
100%. I was just like this, like, oh, if you're okay with my kid, then like, maybe I can sleep with you later on. Like, it was just, and then I would confuse the women's names. Like my dad would be prepping me in the car. He'd be like, we're going out with
Jane, but
totally. And then like, but in
the
evening we're going out with Jackie. So he'd like prep me, and I was just like, yeah, it's like thinking back on it, like, fuck was he doing? Like that's a terrible idea. Yeah, but so yeah, your dad wasn't as bad as that. Like I'd obviously like they were married, so there was no.
Yeah, and then like eventually, they eventually found each other later in life. And
got it. Did that
magic from there on?
Would it, because your father was older and people noticed that? Like, were you like defensive about that? Were you just like,
yeah? I mean, it's definitely like being a kid, you're like.
That's true. You're defensive about everything.
Fuck you, blah blah. You're defensive about everything, and you're like, So it was definitely a sore subject at times because it was also kind of like weird because everyone like had younger parents and all that. So it was like feel like I was asked if like my grandparents stuff. I'm like, no, it's my parents. So it definitely got annoying.
Right, and that was probably like in elementary school, I'm guessing. Yeah, when you were.
Yeah, because eventually kids, they're still stupid, but they're less stupid.
Right.
But they're always stupid.
It's very true.
And
stupid. And so, but your home life was essentially like pretty stable. Mm-hmm. Like, it was a happy marriage and everything was working out well with that.
Good marriage, everything's good.
Mm-hmm.
Grew up in Hansen.
Right.
Had a dog. Had basically like a farm.
Had a farm?
We had like my dad loved animals.
Uh-huh.
Like we had an aviary in the backyard full of birds. We had like a room in the house that was just full of birds.
Really?
We had a toucan.
Holy shit, I had no idea.
We had like one of the huge parrots that can like bite a broomstick in half. You know?
Right.
And I was just like a little kid. We had like a pen with like rabbits in the back. And
interesting. And this was just like
we had like my dog grew up with Tara, which was like a Lassie kind of dog.
Sure. So this was just because your dad was so down for animals.
Yeah, you just love animals. We also had, I remember, like I don't really remember it, but when I was younger, we had a chicken.
Wow.
I guess we had a rooster too, and people were complaining.
Right.
In the morning. So
people were like, "Hey, so 4 a.m. rolls around, this thing's yelling at us."
I guess people on Hansen Beach, they're not.
Yeah. Well, that's not typically what you'd find in like a suburban home.
Yeah, it was literally just like a normal house in Hansen backyard with so many animals.
Interesting. So, do you think that kind of obviously got you started off on the right foot as far as like having an awareness for animals in general and kind of informed you philosophically in the future?
Yeah, I'm sure like growing up around a lot of animals and like my dad, I mean, like he loved going to zoos and everything too. Mm-hmm. More like wild animal park and stuff.
Sure.
Like, open
conservatories, right?
Yeah, so we like go to those a lot as a kid too. So it was like grew up around like all kinds of animals. So I think that helped with my love for animals.
Sure. Yeah, it's always cool to when you can trace that back to the values actually placed like by the parents, where it's like sometimes it's like kid just finds it on his own or whatever, but it's nice to be able to be like, oh, this is like a generational thing.
Yeah,
not like your dad was raw vegan or anything like that, but
I mean my dad definitely wasn't vegan or straight edge.
Yeah.
That, but he loved animals all the same.
Sure. Yeah, but that's still
he liked eating meat as well.
Oh, of course, yeah. But that's part and parcel for that generation.
Yeah, exactly.
And so then, as you started to, talking about your dad, I mean, we've obviously both experienced the same loss as our father passing away. Yours was much earlier than mine. So how old were you when?
16.
Okay.
Yeah, 16.
Yeah, and my dad passed away when I was 27.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I was senior in high school.
Okay. And so, for some reason I thought that he passed away earlier in your life, but so you had already kind of, really started to experience like high school and your...
Yeah, I mean, I was a senior in high school.
Mm-hmm. What school did you go to?
Marina.
You went to Marina.
Vikings.
Right. And so what was your high school experience? Like, did you...
Sucked.
Hated it? Yeah, the sort of typical...
Yeah, I mean, I was a lot shorter and fat, and people made fun of me all the time. Like, I ditched my senior prom, yada yada. So it's like,
Wait, you said you ditched your senior prom?
No, I got ditched.
Really? So you went there?
I went there with someone,
and then
she ditched me.
Really?
Yep.
Well, fuck her.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. What's her first name? We don't need to out her last name.
Janelle.
Fuck you, Janelle.
I don't know her last name.
It's okay. Yeah.
But she ditched me, and then being the gullible, stupid, like fat kid I was like. She found me afterwards. Oh, I was looking for you all night, and I'm like, no, you weren't. But then I still just drove her home.
Right, but you're like, okay. Well, you're just a nice guy. You're not a sucker.
But she got hers, so she did.
Okay.
Like 5 years later, my old friend Nick told me that she saw me at a grocery store, and I didn't recognize her. I just walked past her. And
burn.
She got like super big. She has like 5 kids or something. This was like 6 years ago now.
Sure. Yeah, there you go.
Whatever.
Living well is the best revenge, they say.
Exactly.
So throughout high school, when did you start to kind of discover like independent music, and then how did your high school experience kind of like form around that? Like, did you get into music at all in high school?
Yeah, I did. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was definitely like it. I was later coming into things just because like I had friends, but I was definitely a loner for the most part. Like at school, I had groups of people I like go between or whatever, but I never really like.
Right. What groups were you going between? Like, were you going between like the nerd comic book kids and
nerds, skateboarders?
Okay.
Sometimes some popular people, and then like
sure
metal kids.
Okay.
Kids. I mean, I was.
You were a floater.
I was definitely a floater.
Okay.
But like the people I grew up with hang out were more like metalheads, yada yada.
Mm-hmm.
Which, as a kid, I hated metal for some reason.
Yeah.
I mean, I still hate like Metallica and shit metal like that they all liked.
Sure. That's just never something you were exposed to that you enjoyed.
But so I was definitely like later coming around to it. Like my first cassette was REM Monster.
Okay.
My first CD was Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch.
That's pretty good.
I know.
Those are both early '90s.
And then my like childhood shirt I would always wear was a Depeche Mode shirt that I got as a hand-me-down from my cousin.
Oh, nice.
It's like, and I was like, ooh, I wonder who this is. So I listened to it, and I listened to Depeche Mode a lot.
Yeah.
I listened to like.
Was music important to your parents at all? Like, did they kind of?
Yeah, like my parents always listened to music. Like, I grew up listening to a lot of like oldies. My dad loved like Hair and all that. So I grew up listening to a lot of oldies. And then my mom loved Elvis and like country and.
Got it.
I can't stand most country.
Right.
It's pop country.
Sure.
T Swift. But so I mean I grew up like around good music at least. It was just like I didn't find out about like a lot of bands or like
independent music or right. What was your gateway into that? Like was it a friend that started to go to shows and it was kind of like, oh, that's interesting?
Like it was either my like junior or senior of high school.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, I like knew like independent music, but it was like the bands that like broke kind of
like Green Day and Rancid.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up listening to like Green Day, Blink, like I mean, I was in like elementary school, like all of those things, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So like there was like punk, whatever stuff I was listening to, but it wasn't like the indie side of it.
Right.
But I mean, also like in the '90s. Internet isn't how it was or anything, so it's like unless you like had a lot of friends and you were like going to shows, you didn't know of any bands really.
Totally like
as much, you know.
People's usually entry points are usually like an older sibling or like a classmate that is able
and I was only child.
Mm-hmm.
I like hung out as a kid playing with action figures and reading comics and eating way too much food.
Right. Nothing wrong with any of those.
I know.
Especially when you're a kid.
Exactly. So I mean it was definitely like I forget what year in high school, but I started hanging out with like a few people that were like they were in a band, yada yada. So it was like I gradually got more and more like it was probably not my senior, it was probably more like my sophomore and junior year now I think about it, like and gradually more and more. But I think my first show was Under-in-Law.
Oh, that's a good one.
With Mest and
nice.
Sugar Cult.
It's good. Was that like House of Blues or something like that?
Yeah, House of Blues and
Yeah.
But I think that was like my first show because the people I was like hanging out with at the time, they're obsessed with Under-in-Law. So like obsessed.
Right. So you're like, yeah, I'll go with you guys. Yeah.
But I think that was like my first show.
Got it. What? And so you said that your friends in high school were playing in a band, and so like were they playing like Chain Reaction and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean they were playing Chain, like Hoagie Barnackles, like that. So I mean I went to like a lot of those places. I knew of like throughout high school, I knew like local bands, yada yada. Like I mean I knew like of music, independent music, right. Wasn't like into it as much.
What were you primarily into? I mean, I'm presuming you weren't playing sports in high school. Like, so what were like were you? By all definitions of the term, would you call yourself like an indoor kid? Where you're like, I like to
homebody, like
play video games,
loner, geek, whatever. I play video games, like play with toys. Still, probably not in high school, obviously.
Well, it's okay, no judgment.
Well, not like my action figures,
right? They'd be on display, like an adult does.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm doing again now that I've learned.
Right.
But I would like play video games. Watch movies, watch TV.
Sure.
Be a complete loner.
Yeah.
But occasionally hang out with people.
Sure. Okay. I see. So then towards
drink
coffee like what was your first experience with coffee?
13 years old is when I started going to Starbucks.
Really?
Yeah.
And you just immediately dove into coffee?
I dove into coffee.
That's insane.
Grew up on coffee.
Wow. Okay.
Imagine how tall I'd be if I...
You'd be...
6'3", so
I know. You would be like at least 6'7".
I should have never gotten into coffee.
Yeah. Just well,
fuck me.
I'd really like to do... I mean, obviously, I'm sure there's a study out there as to what age is caffeine allowed, where it's like it's not stunning your growth.
Yeah.
But that would be interesting to see if you didn't drink coffee, how tall you'd be.
I know.
But it wouldn't matter because you wouldn't play sports, so it's not like it would be advantageous.
I would just hit my head on a lot.
You'd have low clearance on a lot of stuff.
That's for sure.
And so then, like you going back to your father passing away your senior year. What did he pass away from?
Heart attack.
Okay.
I grew up like he had a lot of like heart attacks throughout like his the first one I think was in like early 90s when I was a kid. He had a heart attack.
So you had like bypass surgery and everything?
Like in front of me and my mom. He had I forget which surgery it was, but it was he was dead for a little bit, like on the hospital and everything. Then he got through that, and then he had a couple more like heart attacks. Then he had a blood clot in his brain at one point. He like we were like driving home from somewhere, and then all of a sudden my dad just like started like dozing off as he was driving.
Right.
And then like I mean I was like a kid, so I couldn't like drive or anything.
Right.
So,
right.
Like pulled over, I called my mom. I was like something's wrong, blah blah. And then someone my mom worked with, came with my mom to like drive the car, and then like we got like with my mom, and then went to the hospital. They at first didn't find anything, then they eventually found like a blood clot in his brain.
Yeah.
And then he got through that.
But
and then in 2001, he at work like he would go to work early and then leave early, and he would like take naps before he left, because he would like go to work at like 4 a.m. or something.
Sure.
So he would take a nap before he like drove home in traffic and stuff. Or light traffic. Right. And then he just like passed away like in his sleep while he was taking a nap. So
like at work?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like the shared like secretary for the office, like it's like, oh, it's off quiet, and she went in and found him. Yeah. And then there's bad hearts in the family. Right. He died of it. My grandpa did. My uncle almost did.
So yeah, this already.
Yeah, I mean,
it's in the family, so it wasn't well, obviously it wasn't shocking because your father had experienced it.
Yeah,
so many times before.
Like, I was 16 when he passed, but then I like started experiencing like it happening though, like as definitely a lot younger, because I mean it was like in the early 90s when he first had his first heart attack.
I'm sure that like did that scare the absolute shit out of you when it first happened?
It happened in front of like me and my mom. Like he was standing and he had a heart attack and he fell. Yeah. And he clobbered his head on the wall, like made a hole in the wall. Yeah. There was a hole in the wall for like a while, so it was like, So I mean, that was like, I was just like sitting outside and crying like on the curb, like as my dad like went away in the ambulance and stuff. Right.
That's insane. Yeah. So you experienced that trauma, and I'm sure it was one of those things where it was like, did it become, because it happened so often, like did it become normal in a way where you were just? I mean, it was always, I'm sure, traumatizing.
But, yes and no. I mean, I kind of got like immune to it somewhat, but not really. Like, I mean, all of that like fucked me up on many levels for sure. But it definitely never became normal. Like
right. It wasn't like, oh, okay, cool. Stuff. Yeah, cool. We got to go to the hospital.
Yeah, again. It was always like torture.
Of course.
I mean, it was probably like helped a little like each time, or like started having earlier,
or maybe not so much like helped, but it was from the standpoint where it's like, you at least knew how to react. Yeah. Like you knew what to do. Right.
It definitely helped with like just understanding, like not like completely like freaking out. And then it helped me dealing with that younger when my mom was in the hospital. Right. Well, when she had like, they thought it was a seizure, but then it ended up, I forget, or they thought it was a stroke, but then it was seizures or something. Right. So it helped me like
know how to deal with
especially
that.
Since I mean it was like just me. There was people from my mom's old work that came in and stuff, like right. So it helped me with like dealing with that, like sure. But I mean, nothing can teach you for like being in a hospital while your only parent is like in a hospital bed, like totally. Yeah, it's brutal. Not really completely coherent and all that stuff. So
for sure. Yeah, well, that's obviously why. I mean, from what I've observed in your life, that's obviously like why family is like so important to you, and like the people that you care about, it's like, you want to keep them close and do what you can to potentially help them, Yeah. And so as all that stuff was happening to you, and like did you find solace in anything as you were kind of going through that tremendous loss, like your senior year? Like, did you find yourself diving into certain things?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely got me to. That was probably like what helped me get into music and various things more, just because it was like something
you're able to pour yourself. Sure.
Like I after my dad died, I took like a couple months off school just because it was like I didn't want to deal with like people asking like, "Are you okay?" all that shit.
Sure.
Just too much, and plus also I was like traumatized from it.
Of course, sure. Right.
But I think that I definitely just started to try to get into something that I enjoyed.
Right, like pour yourself into it. Sure.
Trying to like block away at all, as bad as that is. But
yeah, well, you have to learn how to cope with something like that, and it's like it's not easy when you're that young and you don't, you're still finding your identity yourself, and then to have that, and it's just like, oh, okay, what am I supposed to do here? But so then like as you started to kind of dive more into it, like did you? I presume that you didn't like school from like a school perspective as well. Like your grades were amazing, I'm sure.
That was horrible.
A+.
I graduated on technicality.
Really? Oh, I think you told me about that before. Well, what was that?
Stupid singles living teacher. Like
singles, is that like home ec?
Yeah, it's basically home ec.
I've never even heard of singles living.
Learn how to sew, cook, how to manage your bills. Yeah.
Okay.
Like, I was doing good in the class, but it was like, so I took 3 months off because my dad died.
Sure.
All the teachers said, don't worry about the stuff you missed. It'll be fine.
Right.
Like
I'm sure they would send like homework home or something for you to kind of like keep up.
And they were like, any of the tests I missed, whatever, they're like, don't worry about them.
Right.
So they like helped me or whatever with that. But then my singles living teacher, she decided to be a bitch and decided to fail me.
Okay.
And because I was going to fail that class,
you weren't getting
enough
credits.
Graduate.
Sure.
But she didn't send home a possible failing notice, so fuck that bitch. I graduated. But then I ended up getting cussed out by my English teacher, Mr. Dodd, because he heard about it. Like
graduated on a technicality.
And so like when he was like signing my paper, like being like free to not like do the last like classes or whatever,
Right.
He cussed me out.
Got it.
But yeah, I wasn't a very good student. Like,
right.
I mean, I'm not stupid.
You didn't
really care, and then also like I'm not like very good at handling like homework and all that. Like, I was definitely not very.
You weren't driven from that perspective.
Yeah, I wasn't driven. Like,
and did you have like I presume because of that you had no like burning ambitions to be like, God, I can't wait to graduate college. I can't wait to go.
It was like I knew I wasn't gonna be able to get into good school and anything, so I'll take my placement test.
Yeah.
Like I was really good at math. I never did the homework, but I did good on the test. Like I knew math.
Right.
Now I don't know shit, but like I was in like pre-calc or trig or whatever. Whichever one was better.
Sure.
And then like I could have taken the other one, but I took a break. I just didn't want to do anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then I took placement tests. And I'm horrible at like tests like that, where it's like
you're probably horrible at the anxiety for a test as well.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
The anxiety and like all that stuff. So like I got put in like Math 1 or something like super super simple.
Mm-hmm.
So like I went to Golden West for like a week, and I was like, all right, this is all way too easy because I was like how it was for all the classes. Mm-hmm. Like I was getting English good in like a lot of the classes, but
right?
I just like didn't.
You were able to get by without putting that much effort into it. Right.
Like I was getting C's, whatever.
Yeah, which was fine with you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really care.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to just get out and then go home.
Sure.
Watch cartoons.
Right.
Read comics.
Sure.
Whatever. So like
we were just talking about you, like your desires into going.
So I was like, when I was at school, I was like, all right, this is all way too easy. I'll just do homework and ways to do.
Sure.
I think not go ever.
Right.
But then it led to like a week later. Fuck this. I'm just not going to do this.
Right. So what was your first job? Like, did you?
Well, technically, my first job, I worked at going to swap meet.
Oh, okay.
Guitars. I was taking guitar lessons. This guy Eddie, that had a shop like by my mom's old work.
Okay.
And him and his now ex-wife did like a swap meet booth selling guitars and like old Disney movies and like random shit, like that. So I started working there like at like 12 or 13, I think. Starting that, and then I also like on summers I would like help in my dad's work.
Oh, okay.
So my dad eventually worked at like some manufacturing company. He was like one of the bosses, and
he was able to get you some summer work,
various like
data entry and stuff like that.
Yeah, data entry. It's like I'm a kid; they don't care.
Yeah,
like,
of course.
I can do that.
Yeah, anybody can do that,
and I like make money doing that. So I
got it.
I grew up like working also, so that's another thing I did with my time. I worked.
Right.
Like since I was young, I've always wanted to work for the most part. Like do something with myself. Otherwise, I'll just sit there and hate my life.
Right.
So I like grew up doing that, and then
So as you were kind of transitioning out of high school and into, when you're supposed to go to college, and you knew quickly that wasn't something you were interested in.
I worked at Hansen Surf and Sport. Never surfed once in my life, so it was, worked there for a little bit, and then I just stopped going. Like I did with all my jobs, because I had too much anxiety. You'd be like, "Oh, I'm quitting." I would just stop.
Oh, so you would just straight up stop?
Yeah, I would stop going. But then
you're like, I don't need this for a reference.
Yeah, and then I got called 2 months later from one of the employees, and they're like, "Hey, can you cover my shift?" I'm like, "I don't work there anymore." I'm like, I guess they're still scheduling me months after, which is weird.
That's incredible.
Yeah,
it's like that's a total glitch in the paperwork as well.
Yeah. They're literally scheduling me for weeks after or months after, because it was literally a couple months after when I forget his name, but one of them called asking cover the shit.
Sure.
I don't work there anymore. You're still on the schedule.
I haven't worked there.
In months.
I quit in my own mind. Did you guys not get that?
Yeah, that's what I did for all my jobs.
Okay.
That's just what I did.
Right.
When I was a kid.
And so when do you? Because I first met you when you worked at Revelation.
Yeah.
That was your.
Yeah, I worked there. I worked at Long Drugs. I worked at a place I won't say. And then and then up until my dad died, we had a swap meet booth too.
Oh, okay.
Me and my dad would sell the swap meet too. And then I after HSS. Then I worked at.
Was that in high school that you
That was I graduated.
Okay.
I was working over the summer. It was a seasonal job. I was working outside the sale, and then I got hired. I was working inside, and then I was don't want to do this, and I started interning at Fearless.
Okay.
And then that was when Fearless and SmartPunk were the same company, so I started working SmartPunk. Then I worked there for 2 years, and then moved around a bunch. I was nomad. Moved to Salt Lake City because someone from SmartPunk was moving there, so I was like, I'll go with. I was there for 6 months, moved back to California.
Okay.
Worked at Revelation since I knew them from SmartPunk days.
Got it.
Worked at Revelation for 6 months. Then I moved to Kansas City for 6 months. Literally, it was both years. I lived Salt Lake City July to November, or June to November, and then Kansas City June to November the next year.
That's funny.
And then the next year, in June, I moved to Jersey to work at Trustkill as art director, and then
and so
2 years.
When you first started to obviously enter the workforce and starting to become more accustomed to because essentially your first independent music job was SmartPunk and Fearless.
Yeah.
So you got the experience at Fearless.
Yeah.
And then that kind of transitioned.
Yeah, because throughout high school, Fearless and labels, Fearless, Fat, and stuff like that. I guess I lied before. I got into music earlier. Now I think about it, because before high school, my favorite bands were Bigwig, 10 Foot Pole, 3 Foot Fall. So I was into that side of the punk.
Okay. And how did you discover it? Because those are random bands to get into initially.
Literally my favorite bands were Bigwig, 3 Foot Fall, 10 Foot Pole, Lagwagon, yada yada.
Was it just a sampler you got?
No,
or something?
it was samplers, but also my childhood friend Russell.
Okay.
He was those were his favorite bands, and he showed them to me.
Got it. Okay.
So those were my favorite bands.
Sure.
So I was Fearless, Bigwig, yes.
Got it.
3 Foot Fall, yeah. It's because that was the Fearless I knew. Mm-hmm. And then
so that's why you were excited to be
so
I want to intern. I want to know more.
I applied to intern there, and then he brought me on, and then I was interning there, and then they liked me, and I was a good worker, so they we need someone else for SmartPunk, because that's when SmartPunk was first starting. Mm-hmm. So there was one guy there that ended up there's one guy, and this guy Sean, and the other guy ended up I don't know if he quit or got fired, so then it was just me and Sean. It was the early days of SmartPunk.
Sure.
We did everything, and then just worked there for 2 years.
Yeah, and so getting your taste with kind of how that, because there's a lot of people that have an idea of how the music industry works.
Yeah, that. Especially since that was the days when it was Fearless and SmartPunk. It was shared warehouse, shared offices, and everything. So it's there was stuff I would learn from the label side, and then also from SmartPunk, I made a lot of connections, built labels and friends to this day and everything. Which every job I've had is because I worked SmartPunk. Because I was at SmartPunk, I was a buyer and various other things. I dealt with labels and distribution people and all that stuff. So that helped with
all the future connections. Yeah. And so like because yeah, like I said, people have a certain perception of how independent music, like how a job at a label works or whatever. Was your perception of that, like, when you first started to work there, an intern, was this like, holy shit, like this is how this works? Or is it like, oh, this is kind of what I expected? Or
I honestly had like no idea what to expect.
Yeah.
Like when I was interning, I was literally like taking apart CDs, drilling holes.
Sure. In promos.
Or like taking apart like broken CDs, put them into new ones. The days of jewel cases, it was like.
Sure.
Yeah. It's really annoying. Shrink wrapping and.
Yeah.
Cleaning and then finding old at the driving vinyl sitting there and being like stoked.
And so then, yeah, as you started to transition into smart punk and obviously work there, like, was that, because it was so small, was that really enjoyable for you to kind of like do? I mean, you obviously couldn't do whatever you wanted.
Yeah, it was cool because it was like, I mean, in ways I could, like, I mean, at first I was just doing orders, yada yada, but then like I started doing buying and various other things. So it was like I could bring in like whatever I wanted for the most part. I mean, there was like stuff I had to bring in, but it was like, because that's definitely, because I started having my path into like throughout high school into more and more, but then like, like working there, it was like that was the start of me more so.
Sure.
Just because it was like I got to be in that world. I like found out about so much more like bands and music and stuff. Like
sure, that's when like the layers started to peel away, where you're just like, oh, like I feel home in a way.
It like opened it more to me because it was like throughout high school I got more like all kinds of stuff. I got like Opeth, Jimmy World, and various like other bands, and obviously throughout that also like the Orange County hardcore bands like that. Like
sure,
some I used to hate, and then I loved, and then I hated again.
Sure,
all that. I mean, it's definitely like. High school gradually started getting into more, and then working there.
That was like once you did that, it was like it's over. Like this is all of what I care about.
Yeah, so it was like every time we get new shipments in, every box of like new promos that they're working on. So I had so many CDs. It was like I'd go to Bionic.
Yeah.
And throughout high school, I'd go to Bionic and go to the youth section and buy like 50 CDs at a time.
Right.
So that's like just what I did sometimes. I had no friends.
Sure.
I'd go to Bionic and buy CDs throughout high school and
just delve into stuff.
Just diving into CDs. It was like, oh, this looks cool. I'll buy it. I wouldn't trust that logic anymore.
No, not at all.
So, I mean, like in the 90s, early 2000s, it was a lot safer.
Yeah.
With like,
well, you felt like
quality.
Sure, you felt like
especially
you
with like labels then.
Precisely, like, you could trust labels. It's like, oh yeah, this came out on Victory Records. This probably has to be good because they released quality
that was the
stuff.
day when like all those labels still had like their integrity and like put out music that they actually liked.
Oh, right. Independent music in and of itself wasn't wasn't the proverbial quote unquote cash cow that it could have turned into, where people entered the independent music culture to make money as opposed to the way that it was, where it's just like, oh, I'm here because I love this.
Yeah, this is all I know. This is all I want to do.
And so with all that traveling around and kind of like you said, you're just like a nomad and you were wandering. Did you learn a lot from those experiences to where you're like, oh, like I don't want to be traveling around, I want to be in one place? Or like how did that kind of inform?
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of got like bored and so I just kept moving around. It was just like I'd be bored, so I'd move to a different state.
Yeah.
Bored, I moved back to California.
Sure.
Bored, I'll move to a different state again.
Right.
All that. I think it was like after my dad, I had a lot of like depression and like my anxiety like grew so much more too. So it was just like when I wasn't comfortable, I would just like move to be comfortable for a second, and then I'd move back when I wasn't again.
Interesting. Yeah.
Try to just like.
It was a way to distract yourself in a way. Yeah. Because
I'd keep like moving new places, so it was like the stress of being in a new place and like having to do like all this stuff. It was good at first, but then it just got like
tiring.
Yeah. I literally like moved to a place and.
Yeah, and then by the time that you had just like got everything out of boxes, you're like, yeah, so I think I'm gonna go back.
Yeah, and then like when I moved back from Salt Lake, I literally just like I had a Mini Cooper at the time, and whatever like wouldn't fit in my car.
Yeah, you took the swap meet.
No, I just left in the unit. I like threw away all my dirty dishes, just threw them in a bag, threw them in the trash.
You're like, there you go.
Left the couches inside, left my bed, which was a mattress on the ground. So I just lived
Sure.
in like a small studio apartment.
Right.
But I was bummed though because I had like IKEA used to have this awesome CD case, had, like sliding doors.
Oh yeah.
It was this really cool CD case, and this is when I had
I
like
I like how you're like my one regret of that time
was my CD case.
is leaving this awesome piece of furniture.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
I had so many CDs. Like all the promos I'd get for Smart Punk.
Sure.
The endless amounts of money I'd spend at Bionic every week on new CDs that I didn't need.
Yeah, then you can obviously sell your old promos that you're not interested in.
Yeah,
yeah, of course.
Yeah, I don't need this anymore.
It's a very vicious cycle.
Oh, I know.
And so then, yeah, I guess the longest job that you probably had besides Smart Punk was like working at Trustkill and like art director.
Yeah, because I was at Smart Punk for like, was it a year or two? I can't remember. It was like 03 and 04, but I don't remember how much of each year.
Right.
It might have just been like a year and a half.
Sure.
So I was there. Then in Salt Lake, I just worked at Great Whale CD Exchange.
Oh, okay.
Worked there for like 5 or 6 months. Moved back. Worked at Rev for 5 or 6 months.
Got it.
Moved to Kansas City. Didn't work. Just like hung out. Did design. That was when I was like more trying to build my design side of things.
Sure.
And then
you're doing a lot of like when did that come into play? Like as far as your interest in
when I was at Smart Punk, because I did like throughout my life I like drew, was into like I would like redraw comic book covers and like whatever else as a kid.
Yeah.
And then when I was at Smart Punk, actually that's when I was like, they had me do like cool shirt designs for bands and stuff, and then that's when I like started.
The design and your interest in technology kind of started to really
in the design side of things, definitely like,
right.
Like I mean, as far as like nerd like technology, like I grew up like building computers, like all my computers I built, and like because my childhood friend Mike, like we were both just like nerds, like we built PCs, yada yada.
That was exciting for you,
which is funny because like as a kid it was like I knew anything about a PC and I could do whatever. Yeah. But then once I went to the dark side with Macs, it was like now I don't even know how to open internet on a PC whenever I'm on it. It's like, how do you open
You're like,
internet?
what is this thing?
Yeah.
This is a useless box.
Exactly. But
so I see. So then, you were during the times where you were moving around, you were trying to cultivate your freelance stuff.
Like
what did you call it initially? Like what you were
Barton Fink Designs.
Oh, okay.
Because the movie Barton Fink was one of my favorite movies, so I named it after that.
Okay.
And then actually, when I was moving back from Salt Lake, I renamed it to No Sleep Studios.
Okay.
And then when I was living in Kansas City, me and my then roommate friend Blake, we were talking about like starting a label, because like throughout high school and then throughout like all the job and stuff, there's probably like 4 or 5 labels that I was like, all right, I'm gonna do a label. But then like I had bands lined up and all this stuff, and like some of the bands went on to be like
very well, right?
And then some like didn't, obviously, but
sure.
So I mean, I had like 4 or 5 labels that I wasn't gonna do, but then like I didn't have money at all.
Of course,
so I was like working in a warehouse.
Yeah.
So it was like,
you're like, I have to pay my rent before I put it on a record.
So I'm like, So they never got off the ground. Then when I was in Kansas City, like Star Labels, that's when No Sleep Records actually came into play.
Okay, in Kansas City.
Yeah, because I actually designed like the logo there, designed the first website.
Ah, got it.
Started working on like a compilation, which was gonna be the first release, but then like we just never got around to it.
Sure.
And then when I was moving to Jersey for the job, I was stopping in Kansas City. I was getting lunch with my friend Rick. And he was like, I know you want to do a band or do a label. I have a new band. It's all recorded Bed Rose, 3-song EP.
Sure.
We're gonna pay for the manufacturing, all that stuff. Do you want to
put your logo on it
and then have your first release finally? I was like, fuck yes. And
you're like, that's easy enough.
Yeah. So then that came out October 2006, and then
got it. And so, not backtracking too far, but like why? Because you mentioned that you played guitar and you were taking guitar lessons. Did you never feel the bite to be like, I want to be in bands?
I mean, there was like me and Garrett,
like
started like a million bands, but never actually did anything.
Oh, okay.
But it was also, I wasn't very good at guitar. Like the bands I started Garrett, I was gonna sing.
Okay.
And like, I mean, you can ask Martin. I wasn't very good at guitar. Like, because we were in musicianship together in school.
Oh, okay.
And I'd be the person like playing Green Day like during musicianship classes. That's all I could play.
Sure.
And I stopped like the guitar path of things because like my wrists are so bad and they just like throb and hurt so bad all the time.
Got it.
So I was like, all right, I can't touch the musical instrument, because I tried guitar and then I tried bass. and I just couldn't.
It all hurt.
It just hurt too much. So I was like, all right, I can't do this.
You're like, out of necessity, I will not be playing in bands.
Yeah, so it was like, then I was gonna seeing there's a bunch of bands that started theoretically with people.
Sure. The idea has started, but then yeah. Okay, got it. Happened. Sure. Yeah. That happens all the time.
Yeah. One of the bands we were just gonna.
So yeah, what was the first band that you theoretically started in your own head and had a name and had what you wanted to do with it?
I don't know the first, but one of them was with Garrett. We were gonna start this band called "Cause the Monster Said So."
Cause
the Monster Said
So. Oh, Cause the Monster Said So. Okay.
I don't remember where the name came up from, but it was gonna be a really weird, hateful, grind,
okay,
kind of metal, whatever band.
Sure.
We were all gonna, I forget what. I mean, it was a gimmicky whatever thing.
Yeah.
I was gonna wear Hulk hands for some reason.
The idea was so grand to start off with, and there was no actual.
Yeah, I mean, we did one. We did we did an ambiance thing.
Oh, sure.
And then we were gonna be oh, we'll get kids into this. We'll say it's members of such and such, and we just spelled the band names wrong, kind of thing. So
that's funny. And for those of you listening, the Garrett that he's referencing is the warehouse manager at No Sleep Records currently. Because I sometimes forget that when we drop people's names, it's oh yes, we should include the listeners into this.
And then Martin is formerly
a
member of a band with Ray Harkins.
Yes, Nate Makoto, he played guitar. But that's that band name isn't terrible because usually what a common theme amongst a lot of these shows is the people that play in bands, they usually reveal their first band name, and that's.
I mean, all of the band names. I mean, all that you read the lyrics for someone.
Okay.
I used to post on there. I'll never post again because it was some of the most morbid, fucked up things you'll ever read in your life.
That's incredible.
And then there was also another band I was going to start with, someone I worked at Smartphone with, called Welcome to Dying.
Okay.
That one was going to be a screamo, Stacia kind of band.
Okay.
All the lyrics were just depressing about suicide and
sure.
Just stupid.
Okay, and so then hitting on Trustkill and obviously your experience with that. You worked at Trustkill for how long?
2 years.
2 years. Okay.
Yeah. They're just under 2 years.
Yeah.
Moved there in 2006, moved back.
And I'm sure that was an insane experience because it was when you were working there, Trustkill was still doing really good business.
Because at SmartPoint I learned various things from SmartPoint. Fearless and at Revelation, I started to learn more label things and also distribution things. Since at the time Rev was still a label,
right?
I mean, Rev's still a label, but
Yeah.
They were signing bands, putting out
records. Of course, they were active in that.
They're active label. And then learned distribution side, working in the warehouse, and also so I got my mail order backing from SmartPunk, doing orders there, warehouse, distribution, Rev / some label, and then Trustkill was definitely a lot of the majority of what I've learned, I think.
Sure.
I mean, I learned a lot throughout them all, but at Trustkill was because when I started at Trustkill was at its highest.
Right, and there still wasn't that many people working there.
Yeah, I mean, there was.
There's 6 or 7.
Yeah, there was 6 or 7.
Yeah,
which for nowadays that's a lot for a an indie whatever label.
Sure.
But I mean, because that was 2006, things were changing, but not as much,
Right.
Labels were still thriving a lot.
Mm-hmm. And Trustkill was still doing really well based on their old back catalog.
Catalog and all of their new releases from it was the last album or two from bands,
Right.
But I mean because I got there I think when Always the Hard Way came out.
Okay.
There,
mm-hmm.
And then I forget what else came out around then.
Sure. Hope's Fall was still doing pretty well.
Hope's Fall was doing good. Throwdown was doing good.
Right.
Bleeding Through was doing good.
Sure.
Walls Jericho was doing good.
Right.
They had Terror was
a
doing
lot
great,
of stuff going on.
So it was
right.
It was definitely the highest Trustkill was, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It was when Trustkill was switching from Red to Fontana also, so it was a weird period when I first started because nothing was coming out really, just because it was transition,
switching distribution companies,
But it was the highest, and then obviously then I saw the downfall of a lot of labels while I was there, including the downfall of Trustkill.
Sure.
And Trustkill was around for a while after I left, but
of course, right. But it had changed so drastically from what kids had known in the early 2000s, where it was you mentioned Trustkill and Ferret, and I was just like, oh well, those are the labels.
Yeah,
like those are the
exactly.
labels.
Especially like being in Orange County, because you're like,
yeah,
all the local bands were like on Trustkill basically.
Yeah, exactly. And so then you were doing obviously No Sleep in conjunction with all the work that you were doing.
Like No Sleep was like my hobby basically.
Yeah, you would moonlight.
Yeah, and then I used the connections I made from like the previous jobs and also at Trustkill to like keep it going.
Right.
Make new connections as with the Trustkill and all that.
Got it. And so, because I'm not going to focus too much on No Sleep, because obviously people can find out you've done millions of interviews that speak about how No Sleep has started and all that type of stuff. But obviously No Sleep is developed to, it's your full-time job. You're able to collect a paycheck from it, and that, that's what people dream of.
Yeah.
And that's pretty impressive. And it's really changed drastically for you from that perspective in the past 2 to 3 years. You know, you could see that where it was going.
There was, various like moments where it was like, wow, this just like became even more real. And then like that kept happening. Like every year there was a moment where it was like, it just kept going at a certain point, like getting so much bigger at a point where
right. What was the first kind of push that you felt where it was like, it took you, like, even when you were maybe working at Trustkill, the first push with the label where you're just like, oh, like this could sustain itself as far as like, oh, the releases can kind of pay for one another and I'm not like paying out of my own pocket.
It was more so like various people were like, kept telling me that there could be something here. Yeah, I was, that's cool.
Yeah, it was encouraging.
I definitely never like, up until like, I actually was like receiving a paycheck.
Yeah.
Because like even when after I got left Trustkill, I was living back out here and like focusing on No Sleep more. I was like doing design for the company at one point, and then I like got office for No Sleep, and then that's when I really like.
Yeah, I remember when that happened, like, because I remember people, quote unquote people, were talking about, was just like, oh, dude, like No Sleep got an office, and like they're, Chris is really trying to take this somewhere.
Yeah.
And I just remember how, people were really kind of like taken aback by that move. But it was just, I always thought it was really cool because it was like, that was you just making the step where it's like, okay, I'm taking this as serious as I possibly can.
It was a complete stupid move at the time when I got the office. It was like, there was no money. I owed like pressing plans, everyone money, but it was like, I'm going to get office.
Wait a minute.
It's going to become a lot more real. I'm going to do this. I'm just going to, there was definitely like, even after the office and stuff, like a lot of like hard. It's still hard.
Yeah. But, nothing's easy with independent music.
But it was, there's a lot of like turning points. Like, when like,
so like, what, like the early years, like what was the first kind of turning point that you felt where I was just like, oh, like all these encouraging words people are giving me?
Because I had just started the label. I had like one offer for distribution through a now defunct label / defunct distribution company partner. Where it was like, it was my first offer because I was going to work for him for one of his also now defunct companies. But then it was like, I'm not going to work for you. I'm just going to move to, I don't know where I moved to then.
Yeah.
But then stayed in touch. Then he was going to like, he wanted to show me, but I was like, I'm looking at other options. Then I hit up Vic since I like worked around. I was like, I just started this label. It's literally nothing now, but I really want it to be something. I'm going to work like my ass off, yada yada.
Right.
And I was like, would Rev want to distro it? And then True Small, like obviously when we take on like more like labels with releases, I literally had like nothing out at that point.
Right, you're like, I got 2 things out.
I think it was literally like I had maybe 2 things out. It was like,
right.
So she took a huge like helped me out massively because I was definitely like, awesome. I have distribution. I have like nothing out. Vic has helped me out a lot. Rev is. I love everyone there. It'll be perfect.
Right.
Like that was one of the things that helped me out a lot because it was like I had a job, so I couldn't do like trying to get stores to pick up stuff.
Of course. And plus it validates the label in a way where it's like you can go to bands and be like, we have distro through this, and it's like, oh, we can take more of a risk on you or whatever.
Like some of the points were like cool things were like when I was living in Jersey working Trust still, like I don't think they're out anymore, Wonka Vision magazine, when like they wanted to include me in like a label features, like it was like 5 features on one page or something. But I was like, oh, this is
but
awesome.
Still, yeah, this is an amazing piece of press.
Yeah, it was it was No Sleep, He Who Corrupts, I forget who else. And it was just like, it was cool because it was like, someone's like recognizing it, you know. So like that was probably like the first like,
sure,
those are the first things. And then like when I was like recognition like in the industry side of things, like when like, well, like a stupid thing, like when like the Upsides was in Billboard, like in the Heat Secrets charts, like that was cool. It was like, oh, it's
but I mean Billboard. that's not stupid because that's like you. It wasn't, you know, your lifelong goal to be like, God, I can't wait to make it into Billboard. But because that happens,
it was just a really cool thing. It's like,
it's great.
I never thought I'd see like No Sleep listen to Billboard. I mean, obviously, like if this was like even 10 years ago,
right?
The numbers for the things that we're doing like wouldn't be in Billboard, you know?
Sure. But still, yeah.
Those, it was that, and then like when I got Office, that was a cool like moment. And then when I got even better distribution, and bands started doing really well, and
right.
Then we actually like got in the top 200.
And then when you bought the mansion that we're sitting in currently, like I mean,
I mean, you know, it was great living in my office for a year or two to save money, and then just paying for food.
Right, you're like, this is literally the only thing I can afford.
Yeah, and it was cool when I was able to actually like move out of the office and live have a normal life outside of that. And then again, like get my own place where I can like,
you can have an appropriate work-life balance.
Separation where it's like, because living at the office, I mean, it saved money and it was cool, but then it was also like,
that shit gets old pretty quick.
It got really old. So it's like I woke up, I was at work. I mean, obviously I wasn't supposed to be living there.
Right.
And there was like a horrible bar next door.
Yes. And
the worst like clientele ever, and they'd be like, the walls are so thin at the office, and music would be horrible and so loud. You'd hear Sublime at like 2 a.m. and I'm just trying to fucking sleep.
Yeah.
And then there'd be people smoking weed outside the door, kissing in the plants in the front.
Sure.
There's definitely some time I woke up to some guy was leaning against the glass and some girl was giving him head. There's just like, and like I couldn't say anything because I'm not supposed to be sleeping or like living in an office. So
that's just, amazing. You're like,
there, like,
all right, I'll take this.
I'm definitely not supposed to be here, so I can't like stop any of these people from doing any of this. I can't like say anything. You can't scare them. And then like the bar will find out, and then they'll be like, oh, I think someone's living there, and they'll tell on me.
Right. You're like, I got to keep it an extremely low profile.
Yeah.
And so, kind of in conclusion with everything, you know, it's two parts of this. Like one, you know, you like being involved in independent music for, you know, a long period of time, like for myself, and like watching people kind of, you know, like essentially grow up, where it's just like, you know, people, like you mentioned Martin earlier, where it's just like, I met him when he was like 14 years old.
Yeah.
Like watching people kind of develop and like grow into, you know, an adult in some way, shape or form. Whether or not that they still have all of their, you know, 15-year-old passions intact, like we both do. And it was just always interesting to see kind of, you know, like your journey and like how you grew up with, you know, a lot of, obviously, like you said, baggage coming into it, where it was like all this personal tragedy had affected me.
Which helped me to dive into it because I was like trying to block out real life. So I was just wanted to work, wanted to do what I like, because it's like, if I was new to this, I'd have no clue what I was doing, especially the moments I was like, all right, I'm going to get my neck tattooed. I'm going to get my hands tattooed.
Let me get my job stopper tattoos.
Yeah, and then it's like, oh, now I really got to make this work.
Right.
I don't want to work at wherever.
Yeah, some insurance company or whatever the case may be.
And hide everything.
Right.
It's so hot.
Wear turtlenecks. And so, watching you develop and like watching you like, you know, grow into the person that you are now, and obviously you're still growing, but, you know, like do you feel that is directly related to the fact that, you know, you've experienced all that you've experienced, like with the label? Like, you know, did the label kind of force you to grow up in a way? Like,
yeah, I mean, it definitely did. Like, I'm still like socially awkward and have anxiety, fucking like wazoo and like all these things. And yes, I said wazoo.
It's okay. But, and you also say yada yada, and it's incredible.
I mean, it definitely helped me to grow on many levels, because before I like started working for all these places, and before I like started doing No Sleep and starting to like have to talk to a lot more people, I was definitely like, I was a lot more closed off and a lot more like awkward and had a lot worse anxiety. Like,
uh-huh.
I mean, now I'm good in my own world.
Yeah,
and it helped me grow to deal with life things.
Right. Step outside your comfort zone in a way. Yeah.
Everyone says I'm still in my bubble because I don't leave Orange County, but that's okay. I feel safe in Orange County.
Yeah. I think there's a huge difference between staying in like a geographical area and then breaking out of it from a mental standpoint.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, it definitely helped me like grow up a little. Like, I'm still like awkward and weird as can be, and like have horrible anxiety about like everything. Like, I don't like going to new places by myself or anything like that. Like, I won't do it.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely a lot better off and a lot easier to talk to people.
Yeah.
It's easier, and I've been able to handle life situations a lot, I think, from it too. You know?
Sure.
I mean, I know even since I've known you, I've like,
mm-hmm.
It's, I think definitely surrounding yourself in something and being a part of something you like and putting all of into it helps you like grow up as a person too and like, mature on many levels.
Yeah, professionally, personally, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, for sure. Well, I hope you enjoyed this in some way, shape, or form.
It's good.
Good. You were good. You revealed stuff. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.